Any thoughts on how that intersects with, interesting things like the Cyber Resilience Act that's coming up in the EU?
I'll say I've kind of buried my head on that one because when I started getting involved with like SNIA, a storage organization that's very vendor neutral, I arrived when the GDPR freight train was coming May 1st or May something. I'll do a little gesture here, and this train is coming at us, and everyone was panicking about how do we become compliant in some way. And it was a very well-intentioned set of guidelines, like the right to be forgotten and personal information protections. And I fully agree, but it also flipped the storage industry on its head. Um, it sure didn't help, and this came up just this week and applies to an upcoming podcast where they hijacked the term data protection. So all of us, like files and blocks, RAID, sharding, whatever people are like, what do you mean personal medical data? Like, wait, no, that's not it. And then you add in the data protection of information security, and we have a term, data protection, that means three very different things to different people. And so I confess I've been uh, not following what I understand to be about this liability that a volunteer might be treated like a vendor and with a legal team and a budget in the broader context of the protections offered to other companies or something. And maybe that was my tell me how accurate that naive analysis of the one or two headlines I read about it was.
There was a time where that was a concern,
Okay.
and it did take. It was actually FOSDEM for the last 2 years.
Yep.
It has done a really good job of bringing the community together with the folks looking to
Excellent.
create the policy, and that is not there anymore. As far as the where it's still a little bit muddy is when you have individuals who are willing to take a contract to provide support for a project that they know well, as a way of augmenting their livelihood. It's not their day job. But they're maintaining some project that's interesting to a variety of organizations, and so they sell the service of support for that. It's not a lot. It's an augmentation, but that then blurs the what responsibility do they have in distributing that in general to upstream. So there's still some work to be done there on some corner cases like that. And we're in the process now where the actual bill has been approved and is now in place, and that literally happened like last week,
Okay.
when it finally got fully signed by
Okay.
Parliament. But now it's actually with several different standards bodies to actually turn the policy into what it's going to look like from a standard and what the actual expectations are. So there's still some more work to be done on the specifics, but a lot of the major concerns did get addressed, and that was a very good thing. It was a very good collaboration.
That is fortunate, and I'd hope we have some lessons from software patents because flashback 10 years or so, software patents were going to end free software because any mathematical algorithm could read against some patent somewhere. And I understand those have softened quite a bit, which is super helpful for things like OpenCFS, which back when companies were proudly patenting everything they could simply to just build this prestige repo, not even sure what they're doing with it because they were freeing their software, yet they were so proud to protect it. And you get things like the CDDL license from Sun that's so complex to navigate the software patents, and it may indeed, and some will say it truly provided those protections, but if your average contributor or a new contributor just reads that license, they get lost a quarter or a third way into it. It's like, no, that's not it. And based on what you just said, I will broadly say that perhaps free software is and probably will remain a solid decade or two ahead of all the legislation that it bumps into. and free software is an absolute paradox. The more you explain it to someone, yes, rightfully, it makes less sense, but it works and it runs the world. So um, hopefully we have enlightened members of parliament and commissions, etc., in the EU, because I'm not convinced our domestic politicians are super aware of the subtleties between free software licenses and software patents and all the things that these are attempting to mitigate. They just understand that lawyers passing large amounts of money between one another. So I will do some reading on that. I am fascinated, but I sure just simply hope they get it right and don't hinder what we are all providing largely at no cost to everybody. It's like that's
Yeah,
the thing.
yeah,
Don't go after the volunteers. That's not in your interests.
yeah. And actually, it's the U.S. has taken a slower approach, and they've actually been quite good at the collaboration part with the community. They put a
Good.
couple of different calls for input in CISA. And Ildiko and I actually
Cool.
know some of the folks that are doing that work on behalf of the government. And they're collecting a lot of good information before going forward and trying to make specific policy to get a really good understanding. So actually that's going really well. And I guess I'll
Fantastic.
also mention that sadly, because of the ubiquity and the popularity of open source these days, there's a lot more non-practicing entities that are filing patent suits and accumulating patents and
Exactly.
going after open source software and the companies that use it. So no, we're not done with the patent problem, particularly from non-practicing entities, often
I
also
forgot
called
about that term.
trolls.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yes. Um,
Yeah, so sadly, that's actually getting worse.
is
But
it? I
yeah,
didn't realize that. Oh, okay.
yeah, on the upside, there's an organization called Unified Patents, and they specifically work with the open source community to, for example, find prior art and to disqualify patents, so that it makes it much more difficult for those non-practicing entities to actually make good money
Okay.
on their strategy. And so that's one good defense and one good proactive defense that's been ongoing, and it's gaining momentum.
What was the patent alliance from 5 to 10 years ago where companies would either pool their
Open Invention Network,
yeah,
and it's
that's it,
still
exactly
there.
it. That's still there. Okay, great. Good to know.
Yeah, OIN is
OIN.
still
Yep.
going. Yep.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah, Steve
Good.
Berveld's
Well,
still running it. He's actually
okay.
working closely with these unified patent folks. And
Okay.
then there's a tie-in with the Linux Foundation as well, all working that to make it
Okay. Great.
a better safe harbor.
Fantastic.
So
This-
yeah,
It it only takes the three of us, gee, at a minimum half a decade to orient yourself in these things, and then a few decades to truly have a firm grasp, despite the fact that you learn something every single day. It is such an organic, massive, overwhelming enigma that is free software that
yep,
um, that reminds me of just the wonderful notion that when it comes to people donating to sponsor software projects, never try to categorize and index and track their motivations, because their motivations are infinitely cleverly different, and just trust their motivation, their intentions, and just let it be, because uh we all have our reasons. Every business owner has their reasons. Every retiree has their reasons, like, oh, I'm going to support this project because it's the opposite of the one they were using at work, or who knows what. Just embrace that chaos, and great things come out of it. It's priceless.